I had so much fun prepping this nugget because I'm going to show you two things that, oh my gosh, again, would have changed the game for me. I say that a lot when I talk about network automation. It would have changed my game because it's true. Check this out. The first one I want to talk about is network configuration backup. So routinely, you'll need to back up your switch configurations, your router configurations, and because, you know, sometimes things happen. Maybe you misconfigured something, or maybe you have a junior engineer that comes in and he kills it, or your configuration just disappears somehow. Like, that kind of stuff happens. But first, let's get in the time machine to like a month ago or something and show you how network engineers of old and still currently back up device configuration. So I go into my switch. I have 5 switches here I'm going to back up. Let's back them up. Show, run. Space, space, space. Until we're all the way through. Okay, we're good. And then I'll take my mouse. I'll highlight all the config, scroll to the top, copy that, open good old Notepad again. And then that's my backup. File, save as, switch 1 backup. And that works. That totally works. But come on, that's pretty inefficient, right? Because I'd have to go through and log into each device, and these switches don't have a lot of configuration. Like, the configuration file is pretty stinking small. I dealt with devices where I'm sitting there scrolling for a bit. Now, copy and paste isn't the only way to do this. Like, I could copy the running config, and if I look at my options here, do question mark. I can do a TFTP server, FTP server, things like that. Like, that's cool. 2 big problems with that. First, it takes time. Second, it requires me to do it, which means I might forget to do it. Human error. There's that human error again. So let me show you a nifty Python script that'll do this for us. Of course, I have my good old buddy Python. And then I'll also be using a Python library called netmiko. I've kind of touched on that in a little bit so far, but that allows us to use SSH, or Telnet if you wanted to programmatically connect to our devices. It does it for me, so I don't have to. Now, I do want to add a little subnote here, just to kind of prep you for what's coming next. Using SSH to access our devices, you know, our routers, our switches, is kind of the, I guess you would say, the old way to do it. Because what we're doing now, it is automation. We're using Python, we're using the netmiko library, but what we're doing is we're actually using netmiko to send CLI commands over SSH. So we're still using Cisco CLI, or Arista, or Juniper, whatever we can use it with a bunch of different vendors. In later skills, we'll talk about another way we can access our routers and switches, and I'll kind of give you a preview now. It's something called an API, an application programming interface. And as the name might tip you off, it's really geared towards automation and programming and scripting, no CLI commands. But similar to what we're doing now with netmiko and SSH, the API will allow us to interface with that router or switch and say, hey, show me the IP addresses, or let me make a configuration change, or whatever. The only gotcha right now with APIs, it's not really a gotcha, it's just, you gotta know it. Not all devices support APIs. Only the newer devices will actually have API support. So when you're talking about maybe what you're working with your lab right now, routers and switches you already have, they won't support API, but they will support SSH, which is why I started with showing you Python with netmiko, because it's using CLI commands and SSH, things that you have learned throughout this course if you're studying for your CCNA. Anyways, let's continue. So these are the tools I'm using to access my switches, and I'm essentially just connecting to each switch, and when the script hits each switch, I'm essentially just saying show run, and it takes the output of that show run and puts it into a file. That's all it's doing. Let me show it to you real quick. It's not too crazy. And here is the script. Now, I'm not going to go over every single Python detail here. That's not what this course is for. I just want to show you what it might look like to automate and access devices like this. So here I've got my 5 switches with their details, how to access them. So their IP address, username and password, which I have stored in a variable up here. So username will equal network chuck, password will equal my password, and I reference those variables down here. And then down here at the bottom, I'm using netmiko to connect to my router. And then I enter a show version. I'll talk more about that here in a bit. And then I enter a show run, and I store that show run in a backup file. So let's stop talking about it. Let's actually run this right now. I'm going to pull up my Ubuntu machine, my virtual machine here on my desktop. That's what I've been using to run all my scripts. Linux is a great skill to learn with automation, so keep that in mind. So all I do here is launch my script, and it does it. So check it out. Boom. Nope. password. And it's logging into each switch, and it's backing up my switch. Let's watch it happen now. And it is done. All 5 switches backed up. Let's go take a look and make sure it actually did it. So I'll open up my file explorer here in Linux. This is where I placed it. And look, there they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I open up the first one here, there's my config. Perfect. Now the cool thing is I could set that up on a schedule. Every day, 5 a.m., back up my switches. Just put that in the program. Okay, we're backing up our configurations, but what about the monitoring and the reporting, the day-to-day stuff you might do? All the show commands, show IP interface brief, show spanning tree. How can we make that part easier? Oh, I've got some good news for you. Because for me, I've always wanted the ability to combine the commands, because there's things you can't see in show IP interface brief that you can see in show spanning tree. So you're having to go through and enter multiple show commands, which, okay, on one device is not a big deal, but when you're trying to monitor a bunch of devices or find an issue, it's cumbersome. This is where automation really shines. Oh, shines like a lucky penny. Oh, and this is so fun. Now you can basically create your own Cisco command that gives you exactly what you want. Check it out. So using Python and NetMiko once more, I'm going to combine a couple show commands that will give me exactly what I want immediately without having to log into a million devices, right? So I'm going to combine the elements. So I'm going to combine the elements I want from the show version command, the show spanning tree command, and the show interfaces command. Now the beauty of this is that when you run those commands, you can't immediately see the information you want. You kind of have to, dig in. Like, let me show you. If I enter show version, that's pretty basic. It gives you, well, it gives you a lot of stuff actually that you may not want. If I do show spanning tree, it gives me a lot of information, but I mainly care about one interface. And then I do show interfaces, and boy, whoo, be spacebarring for days. But using automation, I can pick bits and pieces of these show commands and put them into a nice format that I can easily just go, oh, okay, that's what I wanted to see. I'm good to go. Here it is. My script is called switches.py. I'm going to run this now. You see it? Woo! And it's done. So here's what it did. And I actually forgot to tell you about a command. I did the show processes CPU command to see how the switch is performing. That's the first thing I had here. So I got switch 5, CPU quick stats. 5 seconds, 8% CPU. Last minute, 7%. Last 5 minutes, 6%. And then I picked a few interfaces that I know I use, and I want some key stats, like my gigabit 00, my 01, and my 02. I got my line and protocol status, my duplex settings, my input errors, spanning tree status, so blocked or forwarding. And those are just a few things I picked out. This example is very basic. I just quickly picked a few stats, but you can combine any show command into one quick click, and you can find out whatever you want to know. It could be OSPF with spanning tree, with port security. I mean, it could be anything. Imagine just wanting to, if your boss walks up to you and says, hey, how's the network doing? I don't know, let me see. It's good. I can't tell you how many times I've had to sit there and someone go, hey, is there an issue with the network? I don't know, let me check the 15 devices and do all my show commands. This is killer. You can also go a bit deeper and use like some kind of logic in your programming to make sure things are fine. Like maybe you could have, when you run the script, it'll tell you and show you only interfaces that have half duplex. That's not good. So you can go in there and quickly even use the script to apply full duplex to all the ports. As always, these scripts will be available in the description, links to my GitHub, and yeah, go have fun and try it out. I'll be the first to admit, it's not the cleanest Python, but it gets the job done, as you can see. So in this nugget, we talked about how we can use network automation, even just basic tools, to back up our configurations, manage our configurations, and also to pull out the data we need immediately, because oftentimes the CLI, while it's great, doesn't give us the information we need immediately. We have to use a dozen show commands, and we have to go from device to device. But using automation, we can start to pull out the data we want fast from multiple devices. That's the implications that network automation has for us. I'm sorry, I'm like getting excited. You can quickly pull data from any source, correlate the data, so you can find out real quick why this switch isn't talking to this switch by pulling data from each of them. Oh my goodness. You can also dynamically create reports like what I just showed you here. You can turn that into a report, export that out, email that out, and you can launch the script yourself. You can have the script run on a schedule. Just the options are incredible. Now, armed with this knowledge now of how to pull data that we want to see, in the next nugget, we're going to troubleshoot an issue, but not really. We're going to let Python do that for us, and hopefully it makes things a bit easier for us. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.